Hey everybody, welcome to Hollywood Live. Glad you're here. It is Black Music Month. Well, a lot of people have been talking about critical race theory and what that means. Have you ever thought about what it means when it relates to art and music? As I said, it's Black Music Month, and we've got the expert here to tell us all about it. Dr. Mark Lomax, welcome to Hollywood Live. How are you?
I'm happy to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, your collection that you did, I think in 2019, the 400 Africa, help me out here,
400 an African epic.
and it is an epic. You have, this is the most prolific thing I think I've ever seen in the music business, and I've been around for a couple of minutes. Tell us about how this idea came to be. It's a whole curriculum. It covers more than 400 years. It's
It does.
music, it's text, it's visuals, it's like everything. How did this
Yeah.
happen?
So in 2013, I became one of only at that time about 42 African Americans in the country that had doctorate degrees in classical composition. And I was trying to figure out what a Black man with a degree in classical music means to Black people in America and the diaspora. And I was working at a Boys and Girls Clubs, playing music around the country, being dad, husband, all the things, and trying to figure out what was next after school. And in 2016, I sat in my studio after a period of just being busy, again, working in nonprofits. And it struck me that I only had 3 years to tell this story. And I was calling everybody. They were like, what story are you talking about? Lomax, you're crazy. I said, no, 1619, 2019, 400 years, right? The 400th remembrance of our ancestors having been brought to Point Comfort, Virginia, as the first enslaved Africans in what would become the North American continent. And nobody was really thinking about it. It wasn't on anybody's radar. And so I thought I would write my first symphony. And so I started to sketch the three movements of the symphony, past, present, and future. And as I was writing the themes, it really turned into 12 albums, which in my mind became 12 chapters of this book, this epic narrative. And the epic narrative is in the tradition of the griot of West Africa, the musical storytellers who hold the culture and tell stories of the people through song and dance. Um, and so as I was kind of working on that project over that 3 years, we did release it on January 23rd, 2019. I felt like music was not enough. So we created a curriculum. We created three films, concert videos, documentaries about it, and a whole lecture series. And we were on tour telling the story and helping audiences around the country better understand the cultural context for the now in order to hopefully help us all heal toward the future
Right.
until COVID stopped us in our tracks.
Wow. Well, I don't think anything can really stop you. The momentum on this is absolutely phenomenal. Um, y- Including, like you said, all of the components. One of them is a 90 page digital, however that happens, curriculum that
Mhm.
really does lay all of this out. When we talk about critical race theory, which most people really don't understand, there you go.
Yeah, we've
It
got
looks
hard
like a
copies too.
Okay, and it kind of looks like an old Stevie Wonder album, by the way. There's a lot of components of that,
Oh
but the
yeah.
whole idea of critical race theory, which most people don't understand, actually came out of Harvard's law school with Professor Derek Bell, and it was nothing
Yep.
but a law school exercise. And now all of a sudden, people in the right have decided to make this an issue because they figure this is something they can come up with to try again to change our history. That is not
Hmm.
going to happen, but explain to people what exactly is critical race theory.
You're absolutely right. Derek Bell and others, Kimberly Crenshaw and so many others have done work over the last really 30, almost 40 years
40, yeah.
to create and establish a framework for legal analysis that really shows how the legal system has created the infrastructure that perpetuates structural systematic racism. It is not a class that you are forced to take in law school, right? Nobody's teaching
Right.
critical race theory in K-12. did 3 degrees as a music arts major, and I never came across critical race theory until I started reading more about Black critical thinkers. And what they're lawyers. And it's a subset of the legal system in terms of the education. You can't even take the class unless you're studying for your JD to become a lawyer. And it's an option, it's an elective, it's not something that's mandatory. But really, what it has become is a tool that helps scholars really put context around the what, why, and how of America as it relates to racism. How has America's legal structures really kind of created things that we think are just normal? And one great example is redlining, right?
Yeah.
That was a legal framework that created segregation, right? And what redlining ended up being was something that was used in the marketplace to devalue homes in one area based on who lived there, and in some cases overvalue homes in other places based on who lived there. Obviously, the higher value was predominantly white, lower value was Black. And when it got to about a 7% threshold, as a matter of practice, that neighborhood started to get devalued, right? And those were legal in terms of commerce, in the marketplace, but it was legal in terms of federal infrastructure because loans from the federal government were made in one place versus another. You could not get federally backed loans for your mortgage in neighborhoods that were redlined, predominantly Black. I mean, you couldn't in predominantly white neighborhoods. So that's an instance that everybody should be familiar with to some extent. The racial covenants and things like that, that even I saw in my home in the 80s. You cannot sell to colored folks or Black people, or even worse, right? Inward. But that was backed up by legal framework from the federal government in terms of how funding was distributed for homes. And critical race theory helps us put that in its proper context in order to dismantle these things, and we can move forward in a more equitable fashion.
Well, of course, what you said was the best explanation I've heard of this in a long time, with a really good example of how it works. All of that being said, the far right has taken this and decided, okay, well, this is a tool and we can use this against people, because basically what we're saying is we don't want our children to be exposed to that negative history that we all know happened, but we're not going to talk about it. So it
Yeah.
has become a different thing. So when you put this in the context of art and music, which you have done very, very well, what's the future? You know, we know what that 400-year past was. What is the future? What's 400 years ahead of us?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because the 400 project actually is less about the past 400 years as it is really focused on the next 400 years. And we're in the context right now of a campaign called 400 Forward. And the idea is that most of Americans do not yet understand why we are where we are today. Why are white males going into schools and grocery stores and shooting up people? Why is there this concept called Black on Black crime? Why do we have all of the ills and issues that we have in our society with respect to trying to roll back Roe v. Wade, gender identity issues? I mean, all of these things that we consider as issues for our culture to solve and work through really stem from one critical idea, and that is white supremacy. Everything. White patriarchal hegemonic values, right, where white males are at the center of power and everything else, means that any and everybody else are less than and marginalized in some kind of way, including white women. They weren't in the room where it happened. And at one point in history, they were considered property themselves, right? Poor white men weren't any of the founding fathers. None of the founding fathers were poor white men. So poor white men were also and continue to be marginalized. Thus, what Dr. Joy DeGroy calls cognitive dissonance, where you have these men feeling entitled because of their whiteness, not realizing the value of their whiteness, and killing any and everybody who they think is responsible for taking something away from them that they honestly never had and was never entitled to. That's really what white supremacy is. Because of my complexion, I am entitled to more than other people, right? So what I think we need to do in the next 400 years is understand how white supremacist values have really seeped in and infected American culture in order to root out the problem at its source, heal together, and move forward to create a more just, equitable, and even democratic society. We've not yet accomplished any of that.
Yeah, no, no, we have not. And interestingly enough, we thought we were kind of making progress, and we now realize that exactly what you said, white supremacy has its ugly head has risen. We know why, but it's there, and getting rid of that again may take another 400 years. I hope not. But Dr. Lomax, you have just really put a real good stamp on what this is, what we need to do. Where can people find you and find this incredible collection that everybody needs to see?
Well, thank you. They can go to the web and go to the website. It's Mark Lomax MarkLomaxii at .com. And you can find a lot of it in various places, Google Play, iTunes. Just search Mark Lomax Quartet and things will come up.
They sure will. And by the way, it is Black Music Month, and so congratulations on all of your contributions in that. But I have to mention that all of these incredible concerts that you have as a part of this as well. You know, with tributes to many of the greats. Just speak on that for just a quick second before I let you go.
Oh, thank you. We just celebrated Charles Mingus's centennial on April 22nd, and my trio released an album honoring him. We are working on a tribute to Sonny Rollins, who wrote a fantastic piece called Freedom Suite. And these pieces were back in the 50s and 60s, and they are so relevant now, unfortunately. And so I want to show, not only through new work, but through taking our own kind of spin on pre-existing work from the canon, that these issues have been dealt with by Black musicians since we've been here on this continent. And our music has always been functioned in the sense that it talks to the issues of our lives, politically, spiritually, culturally. And so mixing the old with the new is how we tell that story.
Wow. Well, congratulations on all of that. We truly thank you for joining us today. And this is something, by the way, everybody, go check it out. Look up Dr. Mark Lomax. You will not be disappointed. If you are a parent, it is an absolute must. Thank you. Are you going on tour now that the pandemic is almost over?
We have more dates than we had last year, and we're grateful for it. So
Okay,
we'll be
good.
busy this summer.
Good. I hope you come through LA. This is where we are. Stop
Will
by.
do. Thank you. All right.
Okay, everybody, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to Hollywood Live. We love you. Take care of yourself and somebody else.